panoramic windows of the Apex Summit Lounge offered a sweeping view of the corporate world. But Julian Thorne was solely focused on the one woman he decided was beneath him. He marched up to the quiet black woman standing near the VIP tables, snapped his fingers in her face, and sneered. "What's your position, sweetheart?" He had absolutely no idea his entire future rested in her hands. The panoramic windows of the Apex Summit Lounge offered a sweeping, unobstructed view of the glittering downtown skyline. But Bianca Sterling found the interior dynamics far more fascinating. At 38, the brilliant black executive had built an unparalleled reputation for restructuring inefficient corporations. Tonight, she was evaluating a massive four-way corporate merger that required her firm's capital. She wore a perfectly tailored yet understated charcoal blazer and comfortable leather flats, blending seamlessly into the background while reading a highly confidential digital dossier on her tablet. The hosting company's vice president of operations, Julian Thorne, was pacing aggressively near the premium bar. He wore a custom pinstripe suit and carried himself with a desperate, almost palpable need to be noticed by everyone in his vicinity. When his darting eyes landed on Bianca, who was standing quietly near the reserved champagne glasses, his expression instantly soured. He snapped his fingers in her direction, expecting immediate compliance. Bianca slowly looked up from her screen, assuming at first that he was signaling one of the uniformed waiters standing behind her. But Julian marched straight across the plush carpet, invading her personal space with deliberate hostility. "Are you completely deaf?" Julian asked, his voice dripping with unmistakable condescension. "I told the event management staff to clear these tables 15 minutes ago. We have actual VIPs arriving." Bianca lowered her tablet with deliberate slowness. She assessed his aggressive posture, noting the vein throbbing slightly in his neck. "I don't work for the venue," she replied, her voice perfectly even. Julian let out a sharp, breathless laugh, aggressively looking her up and down. He took in her unbranded jacket and practical shoes, his mind immediately making a catastrophic assumption. "Right. You're from the temp agency they hired for the overflow. Listen to me very closely. The 4 chief executive officers of this merger coalition are arriving shortly. I cannot have random administrative staff cluttering the VIP area." A young event coordinator named Chloe rushed over, her face flushed with absolute panic. "Mr. Thorne, please, I didn't ask for your input." "Chloe," Julian snapped. Never taking his eyes off Bianca, he leaned closer. "What's your position, sweetheart?" "Chill. Let me guess," Julian continued, completely ignoring the sheer panic radiating from the young coordinator standing beside him. "Junior logistics assistant event planner. It honestly does not matter what minor role they gave you. Your job for the rest of the evening is to stand out in the hallway and make absolutely sure the actual executives aren't disturbed by the catering crew. Do you understand me?" Bianca did not take a single step back. She held her ground, her expression entirely neutral and unbothered. She tapped the screen of her tablet, locking the financial file that prominently featured Julian's name and his department's dubious quarterly metrics. She looked him directly in the eye, refusing to break contact. "I understand exactly what kind of operation you run here, Mr. Thorne," Bianca said smoothly. Julian crossed his arms, leaning back slightly as if Bianca's calm. Measured demeanor was a deliberate insult to his authority. I was accustomed to junior employees shrinking away, apologizing profusely, or looking at the floor whenever he raised his voice. Instead, this black woman merely observed him with the detached curiosity of a scientist watching a frantic, unpredictable insect inside a glass jar. "Excuse me," Julian scoffed, glancing around to ensure a few junior executives were watching his display of absolute dominance. "You don't understand the first thing about my operation. You're just a warm body in a cheap suit taking up valuable space. Chloe, the young event coordinator, wrung her hands, stepping slightly between them. Mr. Thorne, we really shouldn't be speaking to guests like... Chloe, go check the wireless microphones right now, Julian commanded sharply, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned his attention back to Bianca, a cruel smile forming on his lips. And you, grab a serving tray or get out of my lounge. You don't belong here. Bianca slipped her tablet into her structured leather tote bag. Her analytical mind was already cataloging every nuance of this interaction. She was the sole managing partner of Sterling Capital. The 4 powerful CEOs arriving tonight were relying entirely on her firm to fund their ambitious corporate consolidation. She just needed to see if they were worth it. The 4 partner companies had spent the last 6 months pitching this historic merger, promising a revolutionary corporate culture built on innovation, mutual respect, and seamless operations. Julian Thorne was the living, breathing proof that their highly publicized corporate culture was rotting from the inside out. I prefer to stay right here, Bianca said evenly, her voice barely rising above the ambient noise of the room. She adjusted the cuffs of her blazer. I find the view from this corner quite educational. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, is this how you typically handle basic logistical pressure, by finding the quietest person in the room and aggressively asserting dominance? Julian's face flushed a deep, mottled crimson. The few junior staff members gathered nearby suddenly looked incredibly interested in their shoes, desperate to avoid eye contact with their volatile manager. He stepped closer to Bianca, dropping his voice to a hostile, venomous whisper. I don't know which third-rate agency hired you, but I will personally make sure you are blacklisted from every corporate event in this city. You are absolutely nothing to me. I believe you, Bianca replied smoothly. She pulled a slim leather-bound notebook from her bag and clicked a silver pen. You strike me as a man who spends a great deal of his professional life worrying about who is beneath him. Julian sneered, clearly entirely oblivious to the danger standing directly in front of him. Enjoy the arrogant attitude while you still can. When the real executives get here in 10 minutes, you'll be the one taking their coats. He scoffed at her one last time before turning on his heel to greet a group of mid-level regional directors entering the room. Bianca watched the instantaneous transformation with quiet, clinical fascination. Julian immediately switched his entire demeanor, flashing a bright, practiced smile, offering firm handshakes, and laughing heartily. It was a flawless masterclass in corporate survival. He aggressively punched down at those he deemed inferior and enthusiastically kissed up to anyone with a better title. Bianca stepped back into a quiet alcove near the floor-to-ceiling windows, opened her notebook, and wrote a single line. The line in Bianca's notebook was precise. Leadership lacks emotional regulation and operational focus. The massive merger hinged entirely on the assumption that the host company's management team could handle the immense stress of integrating 4 distinct corporate structures. If the vice president of operations crumbled over a misidentified guest in a lounge, a $3 billion structural overhaul would be completely impossible. Chloe approached the alcove cautiously, carrying a silver tray holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. Her hands were shaking visibly. Ma'am, I am so incredibly sorry about his behavior, she whispered, offering one of the crystal glasses to Bianca. Mr. Thorne is always intensely on edge before major board announcements. I can show you to the staff break room on the lower level if you want to get away from him. Bianca accepted the glass with a warm, reassuring nod, appreciating the young woman's kindness. Thank you, Chloe. But I assure you, I am exactly where I need to be right now. Tell me, how long have you worked under his specific division? Just over 2 years, Chloe admitted, her eyes darting nervously over her shoulder to make absolutely sure Julian wasn't watching them converse. It's been incredibly difficult. The turnover rate in our operations department is massive. He constantly blames the junior logistics staff whenever the quarterly budget reports don't align properly. Bianca's sharp analytical mind instantly latched onto that specific detail. The budget reports don't align often. Chloe bit her lip, suddenly terrified that she might have said way too much to a complete stranger. I really shouldn't talk about it at all. He just gets extremely volatile when the corporate audits happen. Don't worry, Bianca said gently, tapping her leather notebook with her pen. Your secret is perfectly safe with me. You have nothing to fear. Across the crowded room, Julian spotted the two of them whispering in the alcove. His eyes narrowed dangerously. He abruptly muttered an excuse to a colleague and began marching aggressively back toward their corner, his face tight with renewed irritation. Bianca took a slow, deliberate sip of her sparkling water. The real operational test was about to begin. Julian stormed directly into the quiet alcove, his thin veneer of patience entirely depleted. He pointed a rigid, trembling finger directly at Chloe's face. I explicitly told you to check the wireless microphones on the main stage. What exact part of that simple directive was unclear to you? Chloe stumbled backward, her face instantly draining of all color. I already did. Mr. Thorne. They are functioning perfectly. I was just offering this guest some water. She isn't a guest. Julian hissed, turning his venom back toward Bianca, his eyes flashing with irrational anger. She's a nobody who outright refuses to follow basic instructions. Chloe, get back to the main floor immediately before I write you up for blatant insubordination. Chloe shot Bianca a deeply apologetic look and practically sprinted out of the alcove to escape his wrath. Bianca watched the young woman flee, a profoundly cold resolve settling in her chest. She had seen more than enough of Julian's appalling interpersonal skills. Now, it was time to systematically test his professional competence. You have a significantly high turnover rate in your department. Mr. Thorne, Bianca stated. Her tone did not pose a question. It delivered a verified fact. Julian stopped short, blinking in genuine surprise. What did you just say? I was just reviewing some basic industry metrics. Bianca lied smoothly, keeping her voice conversational and entirely unthreatening. Given your intensely aggressive management style, I imagine you struggle heavily to retain competent junior talent. That dynamic must make the quarterly financial audits incredibly challenging, especially with the added logistical overhead of this impending corporate merger. Julian's eyes darted nervously around the crowded room. The casual mention of the quarterly financial audits had clearly struck a raw nerve. He puffed out his chest, attempting desperately to regain his footing. You have absolutely no idea what you are talking about. My department runs flawlessly. We are the vital anchor of this entire corporate alliance. An anchor can certainly stabilize a ship, Bianca noted, looking at him thoughtfully. But if it is far too heavy and badly managed, it simply drags everything straight down to the absolute bottom. Listen to me, sweetheart, Julian snarled, taking a highly threatening step forward into Bianca's personal space. I am mere seconds away from having the building security physically drag you out of this lounge. You are completely out of your depth. You don't know the first thing about corporate finance, and you certainly don't know a damn thing about me. I know enough, Bianca replied softly. She did not retreat a single inch. Instead, she simply took out her secure smartphone and sent a brief, highly encrypted text message to her lead data analyst. Run a deep financial sweep on Julian Thorne's operations division, now. The detailed response from Bianca's elite analyst arrived within 4 tense minutes. Bianca stood quietly by the window, the soft glow of her screen illuminating her calm features. The incoming data was utterly damning. Julian Thorne's operations division had been quietly bleeding massive amounts of capital for 18 consecutive months. To cover his egregious operational losses, he had been systematically slashing the allocated budgets of the junior event staff, vastly increasing their required workload while fraudulently claiming the resulting financial surplus as a personal efficiency metric. He was essentially building his own executive promotion on the broken backs of hardworking people like Chloe. Bianca locked her phone screen and slipped it into her pocket. Her firm, Sterling Capital, was fully prepared to inject $3 billion into this massive merger. The four partner companies had presented a completely united front, promising absolute financial transparency. They had hidden this glaring liability, or worse, their leadership was so incompetent they genuinely didn't know it existed. Julian was currently back at the center of the lounge, loudly holding court with a new group of regional directors. He was laughing uproariously, a glass of highly expensive bourbon clutched tightly in his hand. Bianca watched him perform his carefully rehearsed routine. He was the absolute perfect corporate illusion, loud, confident, aggressive, and entirely hollow inside. She decided to step out of the shadows of the alcove and walk directly into his immediate line of sight. She didn't interrupt his loud conversation. She simply stood at the edge. Watching him, Julian noticed her standing there almost immediately. His booming laughter faltered, dying in his throat. He abruptly excused himself from the confused directors and marched straight toward her, his face a terrifying mask of barely controlled corporate fury. I explicitly told you to leave this area. The security team is already on their way up here. The security team works for the building venue, Bianca reminded him, her voice a picture of absolute tranquility. They do not work for you. They will forcefully remove absolutely anyone causing a public disturbance. Julian countered, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. And you are a massive disturbance. I am merely an observer. Bianca corrected him gently. For example, I observed that your division reduced logistics spending by 40% last quarter. A truly remarkable achievement on paper. But I also noticed that all supplier contracts were quietly renegotiated at a premium rate. The numbers simply do not balance, Mr. Thorne, unless, of course, the missing savings are being pulled directly from the junior payroll budget. Julian froze completely. The color rapidly drained from his face, leaving him looking suddenly ill and incredibly small. Who the hell are you? He breathed, the suffocating arrogance finally cracking under the crushing weight of his own hidden secrets. I'm just the woman you ordered to fetch your drinks, Bianca said. Before Julian could demand another answer, the heavy mahogany main doors of the VIP lounge swung open with a soft click. The atmosphere in the massive room instantly shifted. Conversations quieted to a hushed murmur, and the attendees instinctively straightened their posture. A powerful wave of anticipation rippled through the gathered crowd. The four chief executive officers of the merging corporate titans entered the room together. They were the undisputed giants of the industry, the wealthy architects of a historic deal that would fundamentally reshape the global market. At the forefront was Marcus Sterling, no relation to Bianca, the CEO of the host company and Julian's ultimate boss. The other three executives flanked him closely, projecting immense power, wealth, and unity. Julian immediately forgot about Bianca, shifting into survival mode. The color quickly rushed back to Julian's face as his blind ambition overrode his temporary panic. This was his moment. He had spent agonizing weeks preparing for this exact interaction, deliberately positioning himself to be the indispensable bridge between the four distinct corporate cultures. He rapidly adjusted his expensive silk tie, plastered on his most confident, winning smile, and practically sprinted across the crowded lounge to intercept the arriving executives. Bianca remained exactly where she was, standing silently near the windows. She watched Julian smoothly insert himself directly into the CEO's path, offering aggressive handshakes and obsequious greetings. He was desperately trying to guide them toward the private VIP seating area he had so ruthlessly cleared out earlier. "Gentlemen, welcome," Julian announced, his voice projecting loudly across the unusually quiet room. "We have absolutely everything prepared for your final operational review. The logistics are flawless. And and I have personally ensured that the environment is perfectly suited for your confidential discussions. Marcus, the lead CEO, nodded distractedly, looking right past Julian's shoulder. He was rapidly scanning the crowded room, his eyes searching the faces with obvious, escalating urgency. Yes, fine, Julian. Good work. But where exactly is she? Julian blinked, genuinely confused by the unexpected question. Where is who? Sir, the new press coordinator. I explicitly told her to wait in the main entrance hall until we... Not the press coordinator, you fool, one of the other CEOs interrupted, his tone remarkably sharp and impatient. Our primary investor. We were explicitly told by her advance team that she arrived 20 minutes ago. The entire future of this merger depends entirely on her final operational assessment tonight. Julian chuckled nervously, a bead of cold sweat forming on his brow as he glanced around the room. Investor, sir. There are absolutely no high-level investors in this room. Just our internal management team and the venue's catering staff. Bianca took a slow, deliberate step forward into the light. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence as Marcus continued to search the lounge. Julian stood awkwardly, his practiced smile now frozen completely in place. Then, Marcus's frantic gaze finally landed on the quiet black woman standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows. The woman wearing the simple charcoal blazer. The woman holding the small leather notebook. Marcus exhaled a heavy breath of profound, genuine relief. He completely ignored Julian's outstretched, waiting hand, sidestepping his own vice president of operations with humiliating, effortless ease. The other three powerful CEOs immediately followed suit, moving with a highly unified sense of absolute purpose. Julian turned around, his initial confusion rapidly morphing into absolute, paralyzing horror as he tracked their swift movement. He watched the four most powerful men in his entire professional universe walk directly toward the very woman he had just spent 20 minutes threatening, belittling, and insulting. Bianca did not move a single inch to meet them halfway. She simply waited, her posture entirely relaxed, her beautiful face calm and unreadable. Marcus stopped exactly 2 feet away from her. The highly imposing CEO, a man famously known for his utterly ruthless boardroom tactics, actually bowed his head slightly in a deep show of respect. Ms. Sterling, thank you so much for flying in early. We know your schedule is incredibly demanding. Bianca, the second CEO greeted warmly, offering a highly respectful smile. We were genuinely worried your private flight had been delayed. It is an absolute honor to finally have you here in person. Julian felt all the air violently leave his lungs. He stumbled back a clumsy step, bumping hard into a glass cocktail table. The crystal glasses rattled incredibly loudly in the perfectly silent room. Ms. Sterling. The sole managing partner of Sterling Capital, the singular entity providing the $3 billion acquisition fund for their merger. The one woman who held the absolute, unchecked power to either approve or completely destroy the deal. Bianca nodded graciously to the executives, her voice steady and clear. Good evening, Marcus, David, Richard, Paul. I always prefer to arrive early. It provides a much clearer view of how a company truly operates when they firmly believe no one important is watching them. She let her eyes drift past the executives, locking directly onto Julian. Julian's face was entirely ashen. He looked as though the solid floor had suddenly vanished beneath his expensive shoes. Marcus noticed the specific direction of Bianca's intense gaze. He turned to look back at Julian, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. Has Julian been adequately assisting you? Ms. Sterling explicitly instructed him to ensure your absolute comfort the moment you arrived. Bianca held Julian's terrified, wide-eyed stare. She could clearly see him silently begging for mercy. The massive arrogance was completely gone. entirely replaced by the raw, pathetic desperation of a broken man, watching his entire career disintegrate in real time. Mr. Thorne and I have had a very illuminating conversation, Bianca said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the perfectly silent room. He was extremely thorough in explaining his position, and mine. I was under the distinct impression that I was a member of the catering staff. He informed me that I was a nobody, called me sweetheart, and ordered me to stand out in the hallway. Marcus whipped his head back toward Julian, his expression turning absolutely thunderous. Julian, tell me right now, this is a massive misunderstanding. Protocol, Bianca interrupted, her tone cutting through the tension like a razor. Does your corporate protocol also dictate that he threaten junior staff with termination to cover his own logistical failures? Does it dictate that he slash payroll to artificially inflate his operational surplus before a major audit? She handed her tablet directly to Marcus. The CEOs read the damning financial data. When I invest massive capital, gentlemen, I invest in structural integrity, Bianca stated firmly. Your foundation is rotting, and I do not build on a rotting foundation. Miss Sterling, please. Julian gasped, rushing forward in a total panic. I can fix the numbers. Just give me a chance. You already showed me exactly who you are, Bianca said quietly. She turned to Marcus. My funding is conditionally approved. However, it requires the immediate termination of Julian Thorne. No severance. No references. Done, Marcus said coldly, waving for security. Julian was escorted out, thoroughly humiliated. Bianca then found Chloe, handing the young coordinator her card, offering her a brilliant new career. True authority doesn't need to shout to be heard, and respect isn't something you can demand just because you wear a custom suit. When you evaluate people based entirely on their outward appearance instead of their character, you might just insult the exact person who holds your entire future in their hands. Have you ever encountered a manager who treated their support staff terribly just to feel powerful? Tell us how you handled that situation in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about justice, respect, and instant karma in the modern workplace.